Nabeel. So this session will be all about operating sustainably, a north-south perspective on transport and COVID-19. My name is Thomas Joyce. I work here at Crossriver Partnership, and over the next hour or so, we'll be looking at two major cities within the UK, London and Manchester, discussing how both cities can learn from one another within the realm of sustainable transport and economic recovery. So before we make a start, just a few bits of housekeeping that I would like to mention. So this live share session is being recorded and will be available to view online. Like always, we will signpost you for the link at the end of the session. Also, I know you'll be able to see that there's just one person watching this event, and you might be thinking, is it only me? Please don't worry, you're not alone, and I can show you that there is more than one person with you watching today. It is also worth mentioning that we'd love for you to see our lovely faces live and in motion, but to ensure a smooth experience, we're going to keep to our headshots for the session. And on the note of smooth experience, do make sure that you've logged on via Google Chrome, as the LiveShare platform works best using this browser. If you'd also like to make the chat function at the bottom right-hand corner of your screens larger, just press the minimize arrows, so both arrows on the audio and video tab and the participants tab, and that should make the chat function slightly larger for you. Perfect. So during today's live share session, we'll be joined by a number of experts from across the industry. These include Nabeel Khan, Director of Enterprise Jobs and Skills at the London Borough of Lambeth. I will also be joined by Davy, Head of High Streets as well from the London Borough of Lambeth. We've also got Victoria Le Mare, Sustainable Journeys Delivery Lead at Transport for Greater Manchester. And then we've got a few colleagues from Crossriver Partnership. So we've got Susanna Wilkes, Director here at CRP, Nusha Rajamani, Project Officer at Crossriver Partnership, and then also myself. And then we've also got Abby McDougall, an Air Quality Analysis Officer here at CRP as well, and she'll be moderating the chat facility to the right-hand side of your screens. I'll come back to that feature in just a moment. And also Rachel Aldridge will be our tech lead for the session. So during today's live share session, we'll firstly provide you with a brief introduction to CRP, in addition to some of the projects we work on. We'll then move over to Nabeel Khan and Davy from the London Borough of Lambeth, and they'll be talking more about the borough's economic resilience strategy. We'll then be joined by Victoria Le Mare from Transport for Greater Manchester, and Victoria will be talking about Greater Manchester's response to COVID, looking at it from a transport perspective. And last but by no means least, Nusha Rajamani from CRP will be talking about last mile deliveries and consolidation centres and the role that they can play in a post-COVID world. So during the live share, there will be the chance for you to have your say via any Q&A session after each presentation. As I've mentioned, Abby will be moderating the chat facility to the right-hand side of your screen, so do post your questions in there during the presentations, stating your name and where you're from. We will try our very best to answer all of your questions during the session, but if we are unable to due to time constraints, then please do contact us via email and we'll get back to you with a response as soon as possible. Our email addresses will be displayed at the very end of this session. So before we make a start, we would like to pose a question to you, the audience. So we'd like to know, have you witnessed any changes to your local area that promote more walking or cycling or other active travel initiatives? If you have and you've noticed these changes, do let us know what those changes are and whether they've inspired you to get out and explore your local neighbourhood. We are really keen to get a sense of what's been changing in your local area in terms of the active travel realm. Brilliant. So without further ado then, let's make a start with today's session. I'd now like to pass you over to Susanna Wilkes, Director of Crossriver Partnership. Over to you, Susanna.
Thanks very much, Thomas. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us to swap lessons between Manchester and London on achieving economic, transport and health resilience as we plan a green way out of COVID. Crossriver Partnership is extremely pleased to be contributing to these plans. Formed 26 years ago to build the Millennium Bridge across the River Thames, Crossriver Partnership is now delivering London's future together, with partners from local, regional and national tiers of government, business and the community. CRP would particularly like to thank its major funders for making this live share session possible, central government units DEFRA and Innovate UK's Challenge Fund, as well as the Mayor of London. CRP is currently delivering a wide portfolio of projects. Our Healthy Streets Everyday project is working across 17 London boroughs to allocate more street space to walking and cycling, and thus to increase footfall past high street businesses. Our Clean Air Villages project is supporting hospitals, businesses and communities to keep London's air clean as COVID restrictions are switched on and off and new forms of economic activity are supported to emerge. CRP's vision is to empower people to deliver innovative projects that support places to really survive and thrive. And we've been making sure that Clean Air leads that approach for more than a decade. A recent survey by Global Action Plan showed that an encouraging 70% of Londoners want to see air quality and traffic being tackled more urgently, and it is entirely fitting that we're swapping lessons on approaches to these issues today, it being National Clean Air Day. So not only are we on a holy grail to discover a reliable health recovery from COVID, we also want to support an economic resilience arising from COVID in ways that are good for the environment so that we're not inadvertently worsening the wider climate crisis. All of this is possible, and transport definitely has a vital and intrinsic role to play. Indeed, the availability of safe transport capacities into city centres is one of a number of interrelated factors affecting post-COVID lockdown economic activity recovery rates. The High Street Recovery Tracker published by the Centre for Cities compares footfall recovery across UK centres. While the London average masks some important central versus more peripheral centre variations, there are some useful comparisons to be made with smaller centres across other parts of the UK, some of which did well from domestic tourism during the summer months. In order to unpick the London picture in more detail, it now gives me great pleasure to introduce you to two senior colleagues from the London Borough of Lambeth, Nabeel Khan and Laura Davy.
Hello all, thank you very much, Susanna, and thanks again for having us here today. Hello everyone out there. My name is Nabeel Khan. As Susanna said, I'm the Director of Enterprise Jobs and Skills at Lambeth, and I've got my colleague Laura Davy here, who's the Head of High Street. We've got a slide deck to go through, so we'll just launch straight into it. I thought I'd start off by just giving you a very quick sort of situation on the ground in Lambeth, actually, just to, I suppose, hammer home the gravity of the situation that we're facing at the moment. We have currently got 21,000 people unemployed in the borough, and we've got 36,000 people on universal credit. Now, to put that in perspective for you all, at the start of the year, we had 9,000 people unemployed and 15,000 people on universal credit. So what we have seen over the last 6-7 months is nothing short of extraordinary, and we've not witnessed numbers like this since the early 80s. So that's the sort of the challenge that's awaiting us, really, in terms of the mass unemployment that we're about to see. And what we've actually been doing is some in-house modelling and taking some national data and trying to get a sense of what may come next. And it doesn't make for pretty reading for us, certainly. And I think this is sort of reflected in boroughs and across London, actually across the country. And for us, we're looking at a best case scenario of unemployment peaking at 24,000, and a worst case scenario, if there are going to be further sort of local lockdowns, of unemployment peaking at 30,000 and not coming back to 2019 levels until the late 20s. So that's the sort of context that we're working within as a sort of council at the moment and as a place. And off the back of that, what comes next is our response, really, and both immediate term and our long-term response. So before this crisis, we were preparing a growth strategy for the borough, which championed economic growth, but also sought to explicitly recognise the biases and barriers to equitable, inclusive growth that we needed in Lambeth. We obviously had to pivot following the events of the last 6-7 months. We spoke to our stakeholders, both large and small, and it was clear to us that we need to shift our focus towards resilience, as Susanna said in her intro. And we mean resilience in every sense of the word, really. And what we've come up with are our three pillars of our economic resilience strategy: people, business, and place. And we were very intentional and careful about choosing the word resilience, and very, very, again, intentional about, we wanted to see, as a place, we wanted an inclusive and resilient recovery. And we've got our strategy, which sort of outlines how we're going to do that, taking into account those three themes: people, business, and place. And as you'll see from what you can see in front of you, and I think we've actually shared our resilience strategy with you all, so do have a sort of flick through at your leisure. But we've been very intentional about putting those three pillars at the heart of the strategy, but also explicitly linking it with our work on business and our approach to places in general. And we very much see all three of them sitting together as part of the solution. I mean, this strategy sets out how we intend to work and where our focus will be, but we are still uncertain times. We do completely accept that. And this strategy is designed to be agile. So we were very, again, careful about not doing the usual sort of public sector thing, which is publish a 70-page document that a few people read and don't refer to again. And we deliberately kept our strategy agile, kept it short. It will be subject to regular review over the coming months as we respond to changing circumstances. But we are very clear on the outcomes we want to see.
Thanks, Nabeel. So hi, everyone. I'm going to pick it up from here and just tell you a little bit more about the kind of three pillars that Nabeel has introduced there within the strategy. So we have people, business, and place. And for each of those pillars, we have a separate action plan that has been developed for them. And as Nabeel just said there, the real emphasis for this strategy is on it being agile and on acknowledging the fact that we don't know where we might be in a few weeks, never mind a few months. So we don't want to be too prescriptive, and we want to be able to use this as a tool to work collaboratively with our partners and stakeholders moving forwards. So with that in mind, you'll see this is the people theme at the minute, and what we have here, which is the same for the business and place themes as well, is that we have a real emphasis on the short term and the next 3 months. So that's where we have kind of detail about the work streams and the activities that will take place in that short term, which we're already undertaking, and it's in some cases which we've already delivered against. The medium and the long term, we've deliberately set out the kind of future direction of travel there, but without pinning down too much detail, because we want to be able to have that flex and that ability to adapt to the external environment and changes that we might see happening, whether that's kind of further tightening of restrictions, local lockdowns, or other things that we will need to take account of. So that's the kind of explanation of the structure and how that works. I think in terms of the kind of the high streets aspect specifically, and how we're trying to embed our green recovery within the strategy, that really falls within the business and the place elements of the action plan. So you can see here in the business themes, we've got a Green New Deal as a longer term aspiration. And then if I skip ahead to the place action plan, you can see one of our work streams there is Zero Carbon Lambeth, where we're talking about our emergency transport programme, and Welcoming Neighbourhoods, where we're talking about interventions in the public realm, both of which are in the short term. So I think that kind of, that sets the context. And I know that the strategy itself will be shared with you, so you can go through it in further detail. So I will leave that there. And what we wanted to do next was just dive in specifically to some of the green recovery elements of our economic recovery in high streets. So I'm going to hand over to Nabeel to start on our first deep dive.
Thanks, Laura. So, I mean, at the heart of our ambition really is establishing a green economic zone where we can focus both public and private investment in green recovery initiatives and support businesses that want to sort of green up their operations. So the headline proposal behind this ambition is a future workspace fund, which we'll be bringing forward later this autumn. It'll be an £8 million fund that we will be sort of funding from our SIL and NSIL developer contributions. And the primary purpose of it will be to help cluster sort of low carbon and environmental goods sector businesses within our sort of green economic zone. So we're hoping to provide nearly 150,000 square foot of improved workspace or new workspace, which hopefully will benefit 640 odd businesses over the next 5 years. We've got a couple of really exciting plans in the pipeline, and some of the pictures that you can see there on your slide, hopefully you'll be seeing them converted to reality in the not too distant future. One of our biggest levers as a council, however, is the council-owned development company, Homes for Lambeth. So although the name suggests the focus is on homes, this is much more than just bricks and mortar for us. Sure, it represents a significant investment in tackling the housing crisis, which of course is absolutely needed at the moment, but it also, for us, helps bring to life our commitments on reducing our carbon footprint and kickstarting the creation of green jobs in the borough. I don't know how many of you know this, but we were the first London borough to declare a climate crisis. So for us, it's important to ensure that our new homes are built to high environmental standards. We published a business plan for Homes for Lambeth right at the start of the pandemic, which covers our sort of detailed programme of work over the coming few years. And nearly 1,200 new homes will be delivered within the next 5 years. And this programme delivery will make a significant contribution to making the borough greener and cleaner. And by the way, our building regulations already require new homes to be more efficient in how they are built and run. But we're going to aim to go beyond these minimum requirements. We have given ourselves the task of achieving the highest possible environmental benefit alongside maximising the amount of sort of genuinely affordable housing, and that's not always a tricky balance to strike. Let me just add, but that is very much core to our sort of ambitions. And as well as being well designed and well insulated, the intention is that all our homes will include technologies to let our residents see how much energy, how much water they're using, and encourage more conscious use.
Okay, so I just want to talk for a few minutes about the emergency transport programme and how some of our transport interventions are forming part of our economic resilience strategy and the high street recovery work. So you can see here, low traffic neighbourhoods is one element of that. I mean, we as a council, we adopted a transport strategy in 2019. And in response to coronavirus, we've developed an emergency response strategy, which in a large part is bringing forward more quickly and in a more agile way a lot of the elements within that adopted transport strategy. So we'll be investing up to £4 million in making improvements to facilitate safer walking and cycling around the borough, protecting public transport so that those people who need to use it most can do, and finding other ways for people to safely move that promotes walking and cycling, and that also helps with air quality issues across the borough. And this is really important for Lambeth, but also London-wide. And it's not just for London, for any cities where public transport is relied on heavily. That's obviously been severely impacted over recent months. So low traffic neighbourhoods in particular, the emphasis there is on avoiding kind of residential streets being used as through streets, making those less trafficked and safer for people on foot and using their bicycles to travel through so that there's less car traffic. And we have 5 low traffic neighbourhoods that we've implemented across the borough and another couple that are in the pipeline. And alongside that, we also have kind of healthy routes aspirations, which is focusing on particular key routes that people are very reliant on in terms of getting to work or visiting local centres, accessing healthcare, and thinking about how we can make those safer in terms of transport and being less trafficked. And one of those that I want to mention is Atlantic Road. And the example that I want to just introduce there for Atlantic Road, which is in Brixton, is a parklet project using some TfL parklet funding. And this is very much part of our High Streets Recovery programme, and where it links with transport and thinking about how we're embedding green recovery as part of that high street support. So in this instance, this is a kind of an image that shows the first phase of this. So it's very much an iterative scheme, and what we're doing with a road closure here is starting to introduce planters and more kind of green furniture that will enable businesses to use the space that's created from the road closure to support them in what are really challenging times within the local economy and across local economies, and also in a way that promotes that safer movement and improves air quality. So as I said, this is stage 1. With one of the really important things with this is that we're working in close partnership with local communities and stakeholders to kind of test and monitor impacts, and also to add to and develop the scheme over time. So we're looking to build this out much further and see what we can do here to really support support businesses. And this is one of many of these types of schemes that we're looking at rolling out. And the final thing that I just want to touch on in relation to high street recovery and embedding that kind of green recovery emphasis within it is much kind of longer term in its thinking, and just looking to the future and thinking about how we can be introducing different ways of thinking and different types of interventions that can reach towards kind of some of the improvements and interventions that we've seen throughout the emergency response. So where we've seen the use of electric cargo bikes. So we used that ourselves where we were delivering parcels from our food hub that was set up in Brixton Recreation Centre. We know that bid partners have been using them. So I think Louise from Instratum has talked previously about their use of the electric cargo bike scheme. So what we want to do is learn from the things that we've been starting to implement and explore as part of the emergency response, think about the longer term physical and social infrastructure that we will need to embed to support those. So where that requires charging points, where we want to encourage and promote development in skills, particularly with green industries, and how we want to take a kind of comprehensive approach to embedding a green recovery as part of our focus. And I'm not sure if we've stuck to time there, but that's been a whistle stop tour that's hopefully given you a sense of what we're doing.
That's brilliant. No, thank you very much, both. Yeah, really interesting talk, and yeah, what a brilliant strategy that is. Let's look to open up a bit of a discussion, because I see there's been a few comments in the chat. And we've had one comment from Naveed Ahmed. Thank you, Naveed. And Naveed says that more quick wins need to be considered. So, for example, where there are one-way systems with an oversupply of parking in an area, we need to start considering the use of segregated cycle lanes to replace these parking bays. What's both of your thoughts on quick win solutions for strategies like this?
Should I jump in first, Nabeel?
Sure.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think quick wins are a really important part of a strategy, and something that we're really interested in exploring in terms of testing what's possible, looking at working in partnership to start to implement things, and then monitoring and managing the impacts of those and developing them into something that can become more long term. So yeah, where there's adaptations to existing cycle routes, possibilities for new cycle routes, looking at one-way routes, or where there's parking bays and other things that we can think about repurposing, or where we can explore the use of our spaces. That's something we should be doing, and we are working towards doing.
Brill. Perfect. Thank you very much, Laura. There's another question in the chat. So just on the basis of electric cargo bikes, and this is from Sue Kennedy. Thank you, Sue. So where do electric cargo bikes park to do the deliveries? As there seems to be yellow lines in a lot of the pictures. So are cargo bikes allowed to park on yellow lines to do their deliveries?
I think in part it depends on the kind of the specific context, and you're right, in the image we showed there, you can see the double yellows, but as part of some of these schemes where we have part road closures, there are allowances for kind of loading bay areas or changes to what's allowed in terms of stopping and parking. So it's on a case by case rather than there being a blanket approach. But yeah, obviously that's an important consideration when thinking about these schemes, to make sure that everything is in place to allow them to happen successfully.
Brill, perfect. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Laura. So I think we've got time for just one more question. I can see that Nadia Ricardo has put a message in the chat as well. So thank you, Nadia. So Nadia says, excellent strategy and leadership, clear outputs that people, businesses and places can understand and link into. How is the journey going to get stakeholders understanding and buying into the strategy and vision? And how are you, all Lambeth, facilitating this and ensuring across the departments that all departments across the council are on the same page with the strategy?
I can take that one, Laura. Hello, Nadia. By the way, hope you're doing well. Haven't seen you in a while. So, I mean, thank you for your sort of really positive feedback. Let me sort of break that down slightly. So, in terms of getting stakeholders on board, this was very much a strategy that we delivered, or that we developed, I should say, in partnership with our key stakeholders. So, in the case of businesses, for example, one of the first things we did when we went into lockdown was set up a business task force, where we brought together on a frequent basis. I think it was weekly at the start, actually, all of our 7 bids. We're really fortunate in Lambeth to have 7 bids. We're really fortunate that all 7 are very engaged, they're very active, and they bring very different perspectives to discussions. And we were sort of meeting with them regularly at the start, and actually having an agile strategy was actually one of the recommendations that they made, given the uncertainty in the air. So we consulted heavily with businesses throughout this. We also spoke a lot to our investors and our developers. We've only just recently actually held a developer roundtable where we brought together our key developers and investors, and again, really wanted this strategy to speak to them, really. And I'm glad to hear you say that it is clear in its outputs. And then the other thing, of course, is that we were very sort of intentional about this being agile, and the need to continuously review it. And because stuff has already changed between now and August when we first published it, so we need to keep that under review. And to your second question about how we're facilitating this and how we're ensuring departments, I must admit I was, and Laura, tell me if this isn't true, but I was quite surprised by just how well the council came together. All departments came together during the first wave, and actually our chief exec set up a very clear structure. One of the work streams that he set up was the local economy work stream, and in essence, we had a whole host of departments from across the council coming together to work on just local economy initiatives. And there was collaboration, there was goodwill, and there was a real understanding that we needed to work together in order to actually deliver against some of these outputs. So I think we're very clear from our end. It's led to a bit of a culture change in the council, and that culture change is going to be here to stay as far as our chief exec is concerned.
And just to echo what Nabeel said there on that point, particularly for the High Street Recovery Programme that we're taking forward, that is completely reliant on that kind of cross-departmental working with colleagues across the council, bringing together lots of different teams, and everyone is coming together, really successfully in terms of our shared ambitions for what we're trying to achieve and how we can all best work together to achieve that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much both. For such a great talk and for answering the questions as well. Thank you very much, Nabeel and Laura. Brilliant. So what we'll now do is we'll head on over to Victoria Le Mare from Transport for Greater Manchester. Victoria will be talking more about Manchester's response to COVID from a transport perspective. Over to you, Victoria.
Well, thanks, Thomas, and thanks to CRP for having me. Hi, I'm Victoria Le Mare. I'm the delivery lead in the Sustainable Journeys team at Transport for Greater Manchester. Our team works on changing culture and improving access to sustainable travel, including public transport and active travel. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about TFGM's response to COVID-19, showcasing activities we've done across the organisation. And as it's Clean Air Day, I'll also speak a little bit about our Clean Air Zone consultation, which is launched today, demonstrating that TFGM is continuing to work on our longer term strategies to get GM moving safely and healthily when we come out the other side of the pandemic. So a little on our approach. When we first went into lockdown, there were a few things kind of happening simultaneously that were essential to getting GM moving again, including making sure that key workers could get around, the public transport was as safe as it could be.
Apologies, Victoria. I hate to interrupt. Just wondering, is your microphone plugged in fully? Because you're just dropping in.
Sorry, one sec. I think I am on my headset. Is that better?
It's going in and out slightly.
I'll turn my headset off if it's easier. Is that better?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, all good. Thank you, Vicky.
Okay, so Rachel says that's much better. I'm going to keep talking unless anyone says otherwise. So we were looking at helping key workers get around, making sure public transport was as safe as it can be, and supporting districts to implement emergency infrastructure, gathering and sharing rapidly changing data and insight, as well as communicating with our residents, businesses and visitors. As we moved throughout the summer, our messaging and approach needed to change, as Nabeel sort of mentioned, and we're still having to change our approach now. And throughout, we were cognizant of the long-term impact of any short-term interventions we were doing. So emergency response to these things could have negative or positive impacts in the long term, depending on how they were implemented in public perception of schemes. So in the earliest days of lockdown, we thought about how we could support people that still needed to move around during the most stringent travel restrictions, and obviously key workers were a focus. Pre-COVID, we had a Pool Bikes for Businesses scheme where organisations could borrow. I'm going to hold closer to the mic. I'm really sorry about the sound issues. Hopefully that's a bit better. So we were lending out bikes for staff at organisations to trial them for business travel. We immediately reallocated these bikes to hospitals to provide to their staff, and then we worked with some of our SME partners in Greater Manchester to provide refurbished bikes and peripheral safety equipment to NHS staff. And with additional funding secured from GM Moving, we partnered with Halfords to get even more bikes to key workers. So overall, we had 450 bikes available to the people that needed them most. And in the pictures, 2 staff members that benefited at the NHS Nightingale Hospital Northwest, Simone's a domestic and porter supervisor and Dan a cleaner, who were the first at the temporary hospital to receive bikes to get to and from work. And they were essential in helping shift workers to get to work when public transport services were reduced due to staff and revenue shortages at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was essential also that we continued to make sure our public transport system was safe and fit for purpose. Our Metrolink trams were quickly subject to stringent cleaning regimes, and when restrictions started to be lifted, we made sure that passengers knew what we were doing to keep them safe, to ensure that people had confidence in using public transport when they really needed to. Public transport use is obviously still far from pre-COVID levels, so it's important that we kind of continue to promote it and make sure it's as safe as it can be. We're also working with Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership to understand virus transmission on public transport better, to adapt our approach as we kind of learn more and more about virus. Okay, so just to provide a little bit of context, obviously in GM we've got quite a different transport hierarchical structure to London. We do have much higher reliance on the car, but this is sort of what we were working with pre-COVID. When we first went into lockdown, an increasing number of journeys were made by bike, with an estimated 1 million cycle trips being made each week, which was a 16% increase on pre-lockdown levels. And in response to this, our local authorities launched the Safe Street Saves Live campaign to support social distancing during coronavirus lockdown and recovery. TFGM, on behalf of the combined authority and the local authorities, also submitted a 21.5 million GM-wide funding bid to the DFT, including plans for 200 kilometres of protected cycle lanes, almost half of which are on strategic routes. So far, a number of measures have been implemented across Greater Manchester, including pedestrianised areas and key protected safe routes for journeys by bike, such as pop-up cycle lanes, and key corridor routes as well as local routes have been put in place. In July 2020, we opened the UK's first Cyclops junction, which stands for Cycle Optimised Protected Signals, prioritising cycling and walking at a large junction in the south of the city. Longer term, our GM Mayor Andy Burnham has already committed to 55 miles of new routes and 140 new crossings to be created across the city region by December 21, all part of our wider B network supporting active travel across Greater Manchester. So from the very early days of COVID recovery, our data and insight teams were pulling together weekly updates to inform all activity that the organisation was doing. Insight including understanding plans for businesses to return, early surveys with health and social care sector to understand staff commuting patterns. And it's been an opportunity for us to gather really rich information about travel and GM that had previously been unavailable to us, and had more sectors kind of working collaboratively together. The data was used, amongst other things, to work with bus operators to ensure that critical services for key workers were protected, and in the run-up to September return to education to identify where pre-COVID pinch points might cause issues with social distancing on public transport. We also used historical data, our travel diary survey, to find out what people's propensity to change to active travel was, which enabled us to target communications messaging to those areas where people were already thinking about walking and cycling more. And then for September, obviously saw the reopening of schools, colleges, universities across Greater Manchester, as well as an associated return to work for more parents, which was anticipated to create pressure on the public transport and highways networks. As such, it was predicted that transport demands, seats and space on services could exceed supply in some locations and at peak times of the day. We tailored messaging to primary, secondaries and further education, as well as working with universities to make the September return as smooth as possible. And finally, on our COVID response, here's some examples of messaging shared as part of our Do Your Bit campaign, which focused on walking, cycling and retiming car and public transport journeys outside of peak travel time, which was backed up by clear information on our website on what time of day journeys were expected to be busiest depending on your local area, as we've seen a change in the traditional peak travel time since the start of travel restrictions. So just very briefly, I just want to mention that as it's Clean Air Day today, we have launched our new Clean Air Plan consultation. So I think everyone knows why clean air is important now. In Greater Manchester in particular, it contributes to the early deaths of 1,200 people a year. We have illegal levels of NO2 across the city, and exceedances have been identified in all of our 10 local authorities. As I touched on earlier, we were really keen for our COVID response to support our longer term objectives, and as part of making our city region a safer, healthier place to grow up, get on and grow old, it's important that we continue to progress activities to improve air quality even during the pandemic. We are taking the impacts of COVID on this consultation into account, assessing the possible effects of COVID-19 on the Clean Air Plan, and the consultation is asking questions for those impacted, specifically on the impacts of COVID-19 on their businesses. So our plan is to implement a clean air zone to encourage vehicle and fleet owners to upgrade to lower emission vehicles earlier. It is focused on commercial vehicles. It will cover the whole of Greater Manchester with the exception of Highways England managed strategic road network, and like I say, it includes commercial vehicles, including private hire vehicles, buses and vans. We're requesting a package of funding from government totalling over 150 million to support owners or registered keepers of non-compliant vehicles with the cost of upgrading to compliant vehicles. And of the total requests so far, 41 million has been confirmed by government. The funding aims to mitigate negative social and economic effects on businesses and individuals most affected by the Clean Air Zone. And there are proposals for a try before you buy electric Hackney carriage trial scheme and EV charging points going to be implemented across the city. So the next steps are for anyone interested to visit cleanairgm.com to find out about the proposals and respond to the consultation. And that's it from me. So back to Thomas.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Vicky. We got there in the end.
Oh, I can't hear though. I'm really sorry.
Can you hear me, Vicky? Hi, Vicky. Can you hear me? I'm finding out that Vicky can't hear us. So what we'll do is, hopefully everyone can still hear me. So what we'll do is, I can see there's a really good question from Rob in the chat. Thank you, Rob, for joining us, and thank you as well for asking the question. I will get Vicky to log back in and log out and see whether she can answer your question in the chat. But what we'll do is now we'll head on over to Anusha Rajamani from Crossrail Partnership, and Anusha will be talking a little about last mile deliveries and consolidation centres and the role these can play in a post-COVID world. So over to you, Anusha.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I'll be speaking about last mile deliveries and consolidation centres. So, well, freight transport has a well-known negative impact on the environment due to its excessive energy usage, and it releases a lot of air pollutants into the air, like carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and particulate matter. But it also has a few social impacts, such as traffic accidents and noise. So even if freight transport within urban areas only represents a small part of the length of the haul, there are underlying issues with inefficient last mile processes that ends up costing companies more and more, and it has a great environmental cost. Poor air quality, as mentioned by Vicky just previously, and that we all are now growing more concerned over. It's a growing concern, and we realize that the freight transport plays a significant role in contributing to high levels of air pollutants. And these are normally associated with the diesel exhausts that are most common in freight vehicles. So this problem can be targeted by implementing sustainable logistics management, such as fuel-efficient vehicles, environmentally friendly transport modes, and capacity building. So this figure from TfL shows the percentage of motorized traffic flow accounted by vans on major London roads. It is a measure of the relative density of vans in traffic, where the highest densities, which is up to and exceeding 50% of traffic, are found in central London, with hotspots around key town centres and in inner London. This map is telling of the current and future state of freight operations in London with an evolving e-commerce landscape. The COVID-19 lockdown has instigated drastic changes to customer behavior, and this has pressured businesses to digitize their operations in order to reach their customers. So with e-commerce businesses changing so rapidly, and with customer expectations on faster delivery times, parcel tracking, and convenience, it's been a massive pressure on online businesses and delivery companies to satisfy the customer's needs. So the lockdown saw an increase in the number of deliveries, where some studies have even estimated that this will continue as customers have now permanently changed to online shopping. So with this pandemic, this has further highlighted the important health benefits of having cleaner air, but also having less traffic in our town centers. Therefore, it is vital for us to reorganize our freight transport system into becoming more efficient, cost-effective, and eco-friendly, so that we can foster smooth transactions, optimize operational costs, and reduce emissions. So a consolidation center is a logistic facility that is located near an area that it serves. So for example, a city center or a shopping center. So this is where the goods that are coming externally to the area will be received and consolidated. So from this point on is when large mile deliveries can take place. And this is the last stage of goods movement. And this is the journey that goes from the pickup point to the drop off. So the main objective of the last mile delivery is to deliver items to customers in the least amount of time while cutting down company costs, where consolidation centers actually present an opportunity for businesses to implement low carbon last mile solutions. That being said, there are certain challenges to implementing this. So over the past decades, consolidation centers in various operational forms have emerged as a potential answer to reducing emissions from last mile freight transport. However, due to land use changes and the rapid sprawl of urban areas, finding optimal logistics land has become a massive barrier in implementing such solutions. So cities like London are a prime example. There are not many suitable locations for consolidation centers. And even if they are, it inhibits strategic capacity for last mile solutions because either it is difficult to find these areas in the city and they come at a very high demand. Another barrier is behavior change, which is probably the harder challenge to overcome. And this, paired with the initial costs of setting up a center, can be overwhelming for bigger businesses. So some advantages that consolidation centers offer are that, firstly, they reduce the total distance traveled by delivery vehicles in congested urban areas, as well as they reduce the emissions associated with these journeys. So the total curbside time and space occupied by delivery vehicles can also be reduced through consolidation, where optimized delivery routes for last mile operations help to further reduce the burden on congestion, which is caused by freight transport. So for example, in London, where the ULEZ is becoming more expansive, switching to low emission alternatives is actually beneficial to the company and freight operations, as it is much cheaper in the long run. My colleague Abby will send a few resources in the chat function. Please have a look to check whether your vehicle status and on your guidance, because it is a good time to make a switch, and there are many government grants that are available. So other social environmental advantages to consolidation centers are noise reduction through the use of quieter vehicles, since freight vehicles have more powerful, noisier engines than electric, for example. And other advantages are just fewer conflicts between delivery vehicles and other road users, and it also promotes greater pedestrian safety. And lastly, shorter delivery times boosts morale and productivity of delivery drivers. Instead of spending a majority of their time stuck in traffic, it's never fun for anyone. So I'm just going to share with you a case study that it's on the Consolidation Hub in Dartford, and this was implemented pre-COVID. So this was in 2019, and it was in partnership with Siva Logistics and Guy's and St. Thomas's Trust. So this when setting up this consolidation center, the stakeholders wanted to ensure the right infrastructure and space was available, so that there would be a complete set of benefits for both the logistics teams, but mainly the hospital, that have very important work to do. And so the hub offered a comprehensive solution where the deliveries were segregated by the needs of the different wards. So this meant that the end destination was not actually the hospital in itself, but the requirements and operations that within the hospital. So the consolidation center firstly stopped vehicle idling in their loading bay. So this is very beneficial, as it used to receive a lot of delivery vehicles coming in, and the consolidation reduced the air pollution on site, which has far-reaching benefits for the patients coming in, the hospital staff, and the surrounding community. And so the space that was initially used for the deliveries inside the hospital and was actually repurposed and used to create more patient-forward spaces. So this resulted in higher patient and staff satisfaction. So this actually put what is normally a more hectic space, it made it more calm and allocated more space for those that needed it most. So this is an example of how the multifunctional advantages a hub has, where the end destination benefits from space optimization, time, and organizational efficiency. So on a much smaller scale, Hospitality Source is a business based in Soho in London, where they supply cleaning products to local businesses. Their customers are based mainly in central London, which are, which is very congested and has not the best air quality and very little loading bays. So what the business did was to they realized that they have frequent deliveries to be made to customers. And because they're all based in central London, they realized that they have very little storage space to keep the cleaning materials that they needed. So in order to downsize their deliveries and storage requirements, Hospitality Source implemented last mile delivery by foot to their customers, and they also reformulated their cleaning products. So the reformulation that they did was they made their products more concentrated so that they can reduce waste. And this, so one model replaced 33 of their previous formula. So this is just an example of how Hospitality Source was able to optimize their delivery process. And these changes reduced customer costs by 40%, and it alleviated pressure from unnecessary traffic journeys. So Hospitality Source is actually a key example of how even smaller businesses can create big changes in their deliveries. This shows that you don't need massive infrastructural changes to reorganize and optimize business operations for low emission last mile deliveries to take place. So this actually they made these changes prior to the pandemic. This is just letting you know that. So lastly, as part of the CRP's Clean Air Villages project, we have developed a tool, which is the Ultra Low Emission Service Directory. It is a free online resource, and it lists businesses and suppliers within the village areas of the CAV project that use lower zero emissions methods for their services. So this includes by foot, electric vehicles, alternative fuel, bike or cargo bike, or even hybrid. So we have dedicated village pages that showcase local businesses that are committed to keeping London's air clean by having low carbon last mile solutions. So the businesses listed on the directory are an example of how businesses of all sectors and sizes can instill low and zero emission solutions. And at the same time, it's encouraging us as consumers to be conscious of the impact of our decisions and the difference that we can make in reducing the air quality, in improving air quality with our purchases. Thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions.
Brill, thank you very much, Anusha. Great talk then. Yeah, great.
Thank you.
A bit more about last mile and consolidation centres. So we have had a few comments in on the chat. So there's one comment. Let me just scroll up. Apologies. So we've got one comment from Joe Bullivant. Thank you, Joe, Joy, for joining us and also posting in the comments. So Joy attended a conference regarding cities across the world, and there's talk that there's greater need for behaviour change or behaviour modification regarding the system. That's probably to do with around deliveries and ordering particular things online. So do you know of any Do you know of any research that has potentially been done into that, Anusha?
Sorry, Thomas, your voice got cut there. Do you mind repeating the last bit? It's about...
Apologies, Anusha. Yeah, no, so Joy has just mentioned a little bit about is there a greater need then for behaviour change to be embedded within citizens for those who are potentially ordering more online? And do you know if there's any research that's been done to kind of show what the benefits of that, show the benefits then of behaviour change in citizens around last mile deliveries and that kind of thing?
Well, if now with COVID, I think people are trying to buy local just to help their local community. But in that case, I think with a lot of bigger businesses as well and smaller businesses equally, they are making certain levels of changes to make to do their part in reducing their impact on air quality. So I think with behavior change, I haven't read specific research. However, I think a lot of the times it has to do with our interest in looking up where we are sourcing where we are shopping and who we would like to, put our money to. So I think it very much comes from a personal standpoint. If we are conscious, I guess we have to make a bit more of an effort in where we buy. But there are a lot of online resources where they track companies and how sustainable they are. So that would be useful to a new customer in buying more ethically.
Brill. Thank you very much, Lucia. I can see that we're running slightly behind on time. So what we'll do is we'll move on, and I can see that we've got a question from Jack Skillen. Thank you, Jack, for your question. What we'll do is we'll take that away and we will respond to you via email if that's okay. So what we will do is we'll head on over to the final observation then, and I'd like to pose a question for our speakers today. And that question being is, what advice would you give decision makers in London, Manchester, and in fact all over the UK, towns and cities all over the UK, to help strike the right balance between an economic and sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic? So let's go in reverse order those who presented. About 20 seconds tops each. I know it's a very large topic, but let's try to keep it brief. So over to you, Anusha, first.
So I would say perhaps to turn to low emission network of employment. These create long-lasting jobs and that are also climate proof, and they reinforce community resilience, and also to incentivize people that are making the switch at a time like this, where industries are facing upheaval. So it would provide them with support and confidence that greening their business is actually beneficial to everyone in the long run. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, Anusha. I'm not sure whether Vicky can still hear us or not.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. That's perfect.
Okay, good. So I think we still need to, I guess, meet all of our targets for carbon reduction and air quality, with the backdrop that public sector finances are obviously going to be stretched going forward. So I think we need to think about the best use of our funds for sustainable recovery from COVID. But initiatives such as our Safe Streets, Save Lives have demonstrated that recovery can be kind of economically viable and environmentally sustainable. So, and to keep cities moving sustainably, we know supports local economies. So I think we're already on the right track in many places. It's just rolling that out.
Perfect. Thank you, Vicky. And across to you, Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're balancing such a range of priorities. I mean, I think sustainability and climate action it needs to go hand in hand with economic recovery, and we're not always going to get the balance right first time. But I think for me, we can use some of the challenges that we're facing now as an opportunity to think about the way that we're working more flexibly and exploring, testing things on a more temporary basis, iterating ideas, and kind of working with our stakeholders and partners to implement interventions physically in high streets and through business support that can balance those priorities and accept that as with the resilience strategy being agile, this is a kind of agile way of us working towards finding some of these solutions.
Brill, thank you, Laura. And Nabeel?
Thanks. Yeah, I can't say much more than what everyone has already said, but I would say get out, hit the streets in a COVID secure manner, of course. Shop local, but shop safe. That will really help you understand the changes afoot in our local economy. Businesses are already starting to pivot. Market forces are underway. I think we all should collectively observe, highlight good practice where we can, share that knowledge in forums like this. So our policy design process in the sort of immediate and medium term, as Laura said, is based on informed qualitative and quantitative data.
Absolutely, Nabeel, thank you. And finally, Susanna.
Yeah, I think we should communicate clearly that clean air is better for business.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. So we would just like to point you quickly in the direction of our next live share session, which will be held on Thursday, the 29th of October at the same time, 2 p.m. So this one will be all about the hospitality and culture sector and looking at their recovery from COVID-19. The Eventbrite for this will be posted tomorrow in the follow-up email to you all, so please do keep an eye out for that. And then finally, do remember to sign up to our newsletter, follow us on our social media, so Twitter and LinkedIn, to receive all of our latest updates here at Cross-River Partnership and upcoming live share sessions. And like I mentioned, a registration link for the next event will be publicised via these platforms as well. So this live share, past live shares, and all of our future live shares will be posted on our YouTube channel for you to view whenever you want, and also to share with whoever you want. And any questions you might have from today's session, please do not hesitate to get in contact with any one of us. Our contact details are on your screens now. So I'd just like to thank all of our speakers today for some really thought-provoking presentations, and a big thank you to all of you for tuning in and joining us this afternoon. So do remember to stay safe, and see you all again very soon. Goodbye, and yeah, happy Clean Air Day.